concerns and speaking to us today. I know it's not always easy to find a place to park, get here on time, and so forth, but we appreciate your input. But what I really want to say right now is I'm interested in scheduling a discussion on our county event venue policy. I bring this up after being made aware of event venues that have been doing business in this county for more than a decade and are struggling with new demands by the county and threat of being closed if the demands aren't met. I think this issue warrants more discussion and soon. So I'd like to make a motion to agendize this discussion, add to the motion the ability to include discussions on this issue from closed session. And I'd like to, as I say, it needs to be done soon. We've got businesses that are struggling. Schedule a discussion for our next meeting, which I believe is November 1st. Do we have a little bit of time? Wait, saying yes? So that's my motion, is to schedule a discussion on the event venue policy that we're using presently.
I'd second that, but I'd ask County Council, I think there was discussion about closed session.
Yeah, well, Rita, I just thought that you had mentioned that that we have discussed this in closed session, and in case that's where the discussions have been held, that we would be allowed on three votes to be able to find out what the history of this policy, look into the history and see if this is where we really want to be right now with the policy that we're using currently.
Yes, Rita Neal, County Council, a little bit unable to talk about any specifics in closed session, other than we have been in closed session to talk about potential litigation as it applies to certain locations within the county. If the board's desire is to have a discussion in open session about the event center policy, I'll look to Mr. Horton in terms of timing as to when we can bring that back.
Okay, and you can help me with this. If it's not necessary, I just thought, what I thought I heard was that some of the reason that we're engaging in the policy we're engaging in right now today is because it had been discussed in closed session in the past. If you don't feel like there was anything to bring forward, but I'm also going, just from my experience on this board, that there has been a time since I've sat on the board that 3 votes brought a complete discussion of closed session to open session. I thought that was the thing. So if it's not, you can correct me, or if it's not even necessary, you can let me know. I don't even remember it, so.
Right, if you're, Rita Neal, if you're talking about a broader issue of wanting to discuss event centers and event locations, I think that's something we can coordinate with Mr. Horton's office and planning and building, and maybe give an overview, because there's a lot of differences and distinctions with regards to permits. Certain wineries and other locations are allowed to do events. Certain other locations, we previously had a policy with vacation rentals and private events. And so there's been, if you will, some different situations that planning addresses in a different way. And then a couple weeks ago, we had the whole discussion about Harvest Host, and I know the board gave direction to planning to deal with Harvest Host. And then the discussion that Supervisor Prashong has been interested in is the issue of hip camps. So those are all slightly different, but we can probably pull something together in the future to discuss that.
Yeah, and just to narrow it down, I'm just talking about our policies and permitting event venues from before and up to the current time. And my, as I said in my prelude to the motion, my concern is the older businesses that have been actually in business for over a decade that are suddenly being looked over and potentially required to bring older venues up to modern standards, when in fact we've never done this in this county. To my knowledge, we've never gone to any kind of business and said, you all, by the way, have to, revisit your conditions of permission that were given a long time ago. We have to revisit those and modernize them, because, and like I said, that in some cases may put these folks out business. So that is the discussion I want to have. And so it's a little more narrow than hip camps, which I know we're looking to revise our camping ordinance, and a lot of that falls under that. But anyway, at least a short discussion whether this board wants to know about what the policy is doing to some of our older venues or not, and if so, how we might make corrections.
Ms. Compton?
I'd like to know if you could add to that discussion the CAL FIRE component, because I've had 2 closed down in my district in the last 2 years because of a change in CAL FIRE requirements.
I'd be happy to have a full discussion on this. We may be told, too bad, there's nothing we can do about it, or that we may be told, I would like to just discuss how we can craft our policy to maybe help with some. I don't believe it's right to be coming in, and I've never seen it happen before on existing businesses, and then that were permitted under particular conditions, and then so many years later changing those. Whether we don't have the ability anymore, I guess we'll find out in the discussion.
Any other questions or comments? I have a question as to exactly what the motion is.
Yeah.
Because I have not heard anything compelling that needs us to move any discussions out of closed session
Okay.
consideration at
Yep.
this point. So I'd like
So-
a clear statement of the motion, please.
Let me, Rita, that whole thing on closed session may be unnecessary, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, read
Okay.
Neal County Council. I think it is. I think if I
Okay.
hear the motion correctly,
Yeah.
it's not to bring something out of closed session, but to have a broader discussion about facilities
Yeah.
that are engaging in events and whether they're permitted, not permitted, and what the requirements are.
And since I couldn't remember in the years past, many years past, I just thought if there was something we needed out of closed session, I would make that motion. So my motion would be more simplified. I'd like to make the motion to agendize a discussion for the next meeting, November 1st, and Wade, I think, is saying yes, to just discuss changes in our event venue policy.
Mr. Horton, would you like to give us a staff resource perspective, please?
Thank you. If the motion maker may consider amending the motion to agendize for December 6th, or we still have time on December 6th as well, the next board meeting, that's going to be pretty tight to turn something around.
Okay.
We do have time on the next board meeting's agenda, but from a staff perspective, that's a pretty tight turnaround to have a substantive discussion. So
Okay.
if you would consider agendizing it for December 6th, that should
Okay.
give staff enough time to put something together.
Will do. That's my motion.
Second?
And that would fit in with the planning discussion we're going to have anyway
It
on
would.
December 6th. All right.
Planning priorities are also agendized for December 6th.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? None? So done. All right.
Thank you.
Can I make one?
Mr. Bashir.
The gentleman from Beaver Brigade, I need to talk to you.